Jewish community has been at the front lines of advocating for Black civil rights, for gay rights, for women's rights, and now it is time for Jews to fight for Jewish civil rights and demand allyship. And every single night, mainstream media networks casually justify blood libels and glorify terror. Just a couple days ago, I was on CNN, and during a commercial break, my fellow panelist turned to me and she said, "You are complicit in genocide." If she had a knife, I swear she would have stabbed me in the back. This is all because I called out Hamas for using children as human shields, but facts did not matter to her emotions. Just yesterday, I was on the Piers Morgan show, which basically has become a platform for Hamas apologists and terror apologies and for them to just spew their propaganda. One guest actually claimed that the IDF kidnapped hundreds of Palestinian children and were holding them hostages. And Pierce allowed this propaganda to be spewed on his network unchallenged. We are witnessing in real time the spread of a blood libel. They call it the famine in Gaza, a famine not caused by Israel, but by a terrorist regime that hoards aid, starves hostages, shoots at the civilians who want food, uses their own children as human shields, and then turns to the world and says, "Look, the Jews did it, the Jews did it." And the media is just eating this up. So we're witnessing a campaign of psychological warfare, and the world buys it. And the question is why? Why does the world continue to buy this? Because Jew hatred sells. It always has. It sells papers, it sells influence, it buys silence, it distracts from failing regimes, it thrives in cultures that have never fully come to terms and confronted the lies that they still tell about the Jewish people. And because, frankly, the truth is nobody cares about the lives of Palestinian Arabs in Gaza. If they did, they would not prevent them from leaving. They wouldn't insist on women and children remaining hostages and human shields for Hamas. They would not turn a blind eye to when Hamas steals international aid and uses it to build the largest subterranean terror network, terror city this world has ever seen. Our enemies know they cannot defeat the Jewish state on the battlefield, so they turn to economic warfare, they turn to media manipulation and blood libels, and of course, they turn to lawfare, which is legal warfare. The Lawfare project works with over 2,000 lawyers and 36 major international law firms. We work with the best and brightest minds. We have a track record of winning groundbreaking cases. Jew hatred sells, but there's something that they didn't count on, and that is the Lawfare project. Jew hatred is taught. It is indoctrinated. I saw it firsthand when I was filming my award-winning film, The Making of a Martyr, where I risked my life and I traveled to Jenin and Ramallah and I interviewed leaders of Hamas and the Al-Aqsa Martyr Brigades to expose how they teach children to love death and to hate life, and to engage in suicide, homicide bombing for the sake of Allah, and to kill Jews, and how they'll be rewarded for that. And now we are seeing the same anti-Semitic indoctrination happening in our schools here in America. And that is why our lawsuits against universities and our K through 12 End Hate in Education initiative that we are launching together with Abby Brody this coming September is so important. But why are we hated? Why do they hate us? They hate us because Jews were the first to say that every human being has value, that man is made in the image of God, and that no one person is inherently better than another, that even slaves have human rights. They hate us because Jews were the first to build a system of law, not power, because we declared something radical, that women have equal rights, and we mandated literacy for women. We introduce the world to trial by jury of their peers as opposed to being judged by an elitist court or a monarch that doesn't value truth or justice. We were the first to say you don't have to bow to other humans because no humans, not even a king, is God. By declaring rich and poor, handicapped or able, the life of every person is sacred, we invented social justice. We preach religious tolerance versus convert or be killed. We even allow for the existence of free and open debate about whether or not God himself exists. And we have sustained these values over time. The Lawfare Project represents over 80 victims of the Amsterdam pogrom. Israelis, Maccabi fans who came to Amsterdam, who were attacked on the streets, incited by social media and radical Islamist gangs. We are suing U.S. coachways for failing to transport Israeli and Jewish passengers to the March for Israel in D.C. When the owner of a restaurant in Toronto posted a sign that read, "Zionists not welcome, Zionists not welcome," we sued her, we shut her down, and we bankrupted the restaurant. The truth is, I always knew that lawsuits were not enough. We can't just sue the anti-Semites. We have to change the culture. And that is why I launched the End Jew Hatred movement, the first ever Jewish civil rights movement in American history. It is truly, truly a grassroots movement. Jew hatred is a civil rights crisis, and ending it is the civil rights issue of our lifetime. We met backstage at the Huckabee show before Governor Huckabee became now the ambassador.
And he's doing an amazing job.
Amazing.
Too. Yeah.
Incredible. So let's get right into it. It's a question that I've wanted to ask you for a really long time. What is it like to be outspoken and a truth speaker with moral clarity in Hollywood?
Well, I have always been a bit of an outsider in Hollywood. I didn't get to LA. I was in New York from 80 to 89 and then moved to LA and was kind of I had no agent, no manager, no car. And God was good to me. And but I've always, so I was a late bloomer in the industry. And because I'm a pro-life Catholic, I've always been an outsider in Hollywood. And I come from a very Catholic family. My mother was one of 15 children. And I have about 100 first cousins on my mom's side of the family because all 15 got married and had between 5 and 10 kids. And we were Democrats, and we boycotted grapes for Cesar Chavez and the migrant farm workers. And my parents participated as they could in Cleveland, Ohio, in the civil rights movement. And my sister was at Kent State when the shootings happened. She was in Students for Democratic Society and the Young Socialists of America, my oldest sister. She's now a Dominican nun at St. Cecilia's Convent in Nashville. So we've all kind of changed and grown. And because, I was a pro-life Catholic in Hollywood, I've always been a bit on the outside. And so this was not a new thing for me to feel like, to stand up for something that wasn't a popular movement. Why it's not popular in Hollywood, I don't know. My business manager is Jewish. My manager is Jewish. My hair and makeup artist and social media person is Jewish. And that's the same for almost everybody I know in Hollywood, and yet there's such silence. It's strange.
So let's talk about that silence. I don't know why the Christian community is not more outspoken about what is happening in Nigeria, what is happening in Sudan. The fact that as we speak, there are Christians being locked in churches and burned alive. Why aren't we seeing more people speak out against these issues? Because, if they did, I think we would find that we have a common thread, and that's radicalism. It's radical Islam, and that's what's driving this. So why aren't we hearing more from the Christian community?
I would venture a guess that because the term Islamophobia has been popularized, and for some reason people are very afraid to be labeled with that. And so I think the churches don't want to be seen as taking a side in something that could identify them as Islamophobic. So I think, once you commit to that you're committing to saying anything we say against Islam is Islamophobic. Then when radical Islamists start murdering Christians, you're kind of caught because you're not allowed to, you've committed to this thing where you're not allowed to say anything about it. I'm very happy to be Islamophobic. I will wear that label as proudly as I would wear the label as Zionist. Why? There's a lot to be phobic about in Islam. There's a lot, as we see.
But the irony also is I was called Islamophobic for risking my life to do a movie to save Palestinian Muslim children, that they don't deserve to be used as human shields and suicide bombers. And if it's anti-Muslim to advocate for children's rights, what then is pro-Muslim? And aren't they really the bigots?
Right. And the whole thing doesn't make any sense anymore. When you have your friends who, the Jewish community, I've heard this from so many Jewish friends, they supported every other movement that has come along, and especially in Hollywood. And then when it comes to this, there is silence. And I know that many of my Jewish friends feel deeply betrayed by the community. So it's really a very strange thing. And I feel like there is a spiritual battle that's happening, because when you have people who are educated, who seem logical, and you show them Hamas body cam footage from October 7th, and you show them video of our starving hostages digging their own graves, and they walk away, they don't want to talk about it, or they dismiss it as Israeli propaganda. What is happening there? Why are people moving away from the truth? Why do they refuse to see it? And I think it's a question that many people have asked. I heard Barry Weiss talk about this with Mike Huckabee and with Doug Murray, and they both kind of alluded to this sort of sense of, okay, I'm going to get a little weird here, sense of evil. And I think that age-old question of why is it always the Jews, and you talked about it from the beginning of time, the Jews have always been blamed. And, as a Catholic, there's a saying from the New Testament, St. Paul, first of all, he says, put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you do everything you can to stand, and after you've done everything, stand. And we have to rely on Hashem after we stand. He also says, this is not a war in this world of flesh and blood. This is about principalities and powers, that there's a whole other level of battle that's going on. And this is why whatever spectrum you are in your faith, however you practice it, we have to really constantly ask God for protection and mercy, because there's a battle going on there that is bigger than what we just see with our own eyes. And so I think that's why we see this blindness to evil and this acceptance of lies, is because there's a bigger battle going on here, and it's bigger than us. We still have to stand, however. There's a great, this was from Isaiah, from the Old Testament, that was at my Christmas Mass last year. And I thought, this absolutely applies to me. This is from Isaiah 62. For Zion's sake, I will not keep silent. For Jerusalem's sake, I will not remain quiet, till her vindication shines out like the dawn, her salvation like a blazing torch. The nations will see your vindication, and all kings your glory, and you will be called by a new name that the mouth of the Lord will bestow. You will be a crown of splendor in the Lord's hand, a royal diadem in the hand of your God. And that really inspires me to keep speaking out.
Well, thank you for your courage. I wanted to ask you one more question before we break. How do we get the allyship with the Catholic community? What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? Do you have any advice for the End Jew Hatred civil rights movement? Because it seems like we're screaming at the top of our lungs. This isn't just a Jewish issue. The radicalization of American youth in college campuses is going to destroy America from within. It's not just a Jewish problem. So what are we doing wrong? How do we get that allyship?
You're not doing anything wrong. First of all, don't blame yourself. I know about Jewish guilt. I'm a Catholic. We have Catholic guilds. Don't blame yourselves for this. As I said, it's a spiritual battle, and then it's also one of and you're doing a great job about taking over the narrative. When the other side says, well, Jews rule the world, Jews are in charge of everything, I'm thinking, really? Would this be happening if Jews were really in charge of everything? But I have to say that I know Elizabeth Doros, who is my partner in crime with O7C, she is arranging an event in New York in November that we're going to do a Catholic, Jewish, and hopefully a few Muslim speakers in New York in November. And I think there's a tiny sliver of very right-wing Catholics that are problematic. We know one of them has one of the biggest audiences on podcasts. I never say your name because I don't want to give her the airtime. But I think it's about being able to frame it in a way that people can digest. I also think, and I've said this from the beginning with Elizabeth, we're trying to have Muslims voices who support peace, who are not afraid to speak out against what's happening. I think that's really important. I think if you can get Muslims to also speak, then I think people will feel like they have permission to come alongside of both of us, right? So, and there are a few really incredible people out there, and we're just starting to find ways to incorporate them into our activities.
Well, we are so grateful for your allyship, for your support. Is there any message that you want to leave us with before we break?
Well, you probably don't know this, but Saint Michael the Archangel is the patron saint of Israel. And there's a beautiful prayer if you just go online and put in the prayer of Saint Michael the Archangel. But all you have to know is the first line. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Just say that when you come into a situation. He's in the Old Testament, he's in the New Testament, and he's the highest angel in the hierarchy. If you, I know you probably don't believe in any of this, but just give it a shot.
No, but you're saying it's important because we've lost faith, no matter what your faith is. But when you don't have God, when you don't have faith, when you don't have morals, principles, values, laws.
Well, that's why we're here, isn't it?
You're lost.
That's why all these college students who don't have a foundation in any kind of, I would say, spiritual or theological, moral guidance, will just go with whatever kind of pricks their emotion. It's they're playing on kids' emotions, and kids are very emotional, right? And they have a lot of propaganda. So I agree with that. And I think when you have that core, so as a Catholic, our goal in life is not to have a hit comedy series. The goal in life is to be sanctifying yourself. This is a journey of sanctification. So whatever comes along, this is something that I feel God called me to, and it's the people I've met. Amazing. I mean, and it's given me hope for the world because of people like you, because of everybody that's here. Such incredible people. I don't care for smaller numbers. It's the best people, the highest quality people, the highest vibrating people I've ever met in my life, and it's fantastic. And even though we're small in numbers, if you're on the right side, you're okay. We're going to be okay.
Well, we're grateful to have you on our side as well, to be so outspoken. So thank you so much, Patricia, for coming all the way to address us.